So I realize when everybody thinks of Stephen King, they think about his monsters and his really detestable characters. And they're great. They really are great. But there are some that are on the side of the light, too. So let's talk about some of them. Hey, what's up, bookworms and constant readers? We are back to talk about the multiverse and Stephen King today, guys. I'm taking a break from doing Into the Multiverse videos. I didn't want to, deprive you of new Stephen King content because I deprive myself when I do that because I got to talk about King at least once a month on this channel, right? And since I am taking a break, like I said, from Dark Tower and Into the Multiverse, I thought, hey, now would be a good time to do a nice little list for Stephen King. And something that I've been thinking about for a long time is I did my 19 Stephen King villains, that I love the most. And that was a very, very tough list to make. So I started also thinking, what else could I do? How about protagonists? No one ever talks about his protagonists, So I do think that there are quite a few memorable characters that maybe not are, as morally white maybe as you would expect most protagonists in a story to be. I mean, this is Stephen King after all. These are always going to be damaged characters, but I think that's what makes them great. It's because they're believable as, the everyman. So that's why I've got a list here that I kind of want to go over. Now, I do want to say I do got a couple rules for myself. Obviously, no spoilers for you guys. I don't want to spoil anything for you because in the end, my goal is to get you to read Stephen King more. But I do want to talk about some of my favorites here, but I want to make sure I keep it to one per book because if not, guys, I'll just be listing like 5 characters from It and like 7 characters from The Stand, and I don't want to do that. I want to kind of make myself be honest here, think about my very favorite from each of these books I'm going to kind of talk about. Now, I do have 10 of them, but they are not ranked, guys. I'm not ranking these at all. This is just, 10 that I thought I really do like or sympathize or relate to those characters. And we're going to talk about those now. But before we do, guys, we're talking about a couple of honorable mentions, some that I really wanted to put on here. I just couldn't cut any out of the actual 10 that I have to fit them on. The first up is Andy Dufresne from Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. Being an accountant myself, it's always a lot of fun to see a character kind of find a way to game a system of any sort and kind of, just figure out how to screw over the people that think they're screwing everyone else over. That's always something that I always liked about Andy. But with Andy, it's really about that friendship that he makes with Red and just, again, the never losing hope in just an absolute bleak and awful situation, no matter how many years it is. Andy never lost hope of something turning out good in the end. So I'll always think about Andy in those situations. I'm also going to think about Jessie Burlingame from Gerald's Game, because what I liked about her character was that she had a repressed memory and a very, very dark past that kind of turned her into the strong, level-headed character that she was in this story. And it took an absolutely traumatic event to bring that out and let her confront that and become an even more powerful character. And I love that about her, that she never gave up. Again, a character that doesn't give up in an absolutely no-win situation. A lot of people would have just said, screw it, and laid there and died. And she found a way to overcome it. And over some incredible odds, but also some very scary things happening to her at the same time. So that's a character I greatly, greatly admire for what she's able to overcome in her childhood and as an adult. And then lastly, I go with Gordy LaChance from The Body, just because it reminds me of what it was like living in kind of somewhat of a dysfunctional family. Obviously mine was more just because, it was a divorced family, not a family where, you had lost a sibling. But just the kind of the coming of age story where, endless summers, the spending time with your friends from sun up to sundown, that's what everything was about kind of thing. And that's just a character I've always really just was able to relate to because I had a lot of things. When I was younger, sure, I wanted to be a writer before I realized I couldn't write. I could not come up with a story that wasn't just riffing off of someone else's story kind of thing. But just a character that I could see a lot of myself in, and definitely with his friends, a lot of the similarities in the friends that I kind of ran around with in my youth. Okay, let's get to the list proper here. Got to start with my favorite Stephen King book, which is It. And this is a very hard topic here because I do love me some Losers Club. That is just, it's hard for me to beat this, guys. I always say my favorite thing that King does is the coming of age story. And he does 7 of them in here. So who am I going to go with? I think I got to stick with my main man, Ben Hanscom. because my heart burns there too. Now with Ben, there's several things. This one really is one that just I saw so much of myself in this character, and I think that's what makes it so great. Is you can find something to relate to out of these 7 children here, something that's going to make you think of your childhood in some way. I really do believe everyone's going to find something to relate to in One of the Losers. With me, it was Ben for a multitude of reasons. When I was 15, my aunt was passing away of dying of cancer, and my mom and her were still very close as her sister. And so we moved out here. She wanted to be with her, well, during her final years. And so we moved out here. Didn't know anybody, and I didn't want to go. Just like Ben had to move to a new area that he didn't know anybody. But you know what? That summer, I made some friends that I am still friends with today. I made lifelong friends that summer. So I got that in common. Also got the weight thing in common, guys. I was quite a chunky kid. Junior high, I was way overweight, like to the point to where it was giving me like back and knee problems as a kid. And that summer when I moved here, didn't know anybody. All I did all summer was say, okay, now's the time to make a change. I swam every day. I ran every day. I ate healthy. And there you go. Boom. Coupled that with a nice little growth spurt, and I was on my way. So that's just kind of something that I've always kind of related to with Ben and why I do love that character. And also, kind of that thing where you have that one of those good friends that you're absolutely in love with her, and she's in love with your friend. I can definitely have all those relations when it comes to Ben Hanscom. Definitely my favorite of the Losers Club, and to this day why I call my 7-year-old son Haystack, because he is a little thick. Next up, let's go with Johnny Smith from the Dead Zone. Now what I like about Johnny Smith is a lot of people that had this ability to touch people and see the future, they're probably going to use this for nefarious reasons. They're probably going to use it to get rich quick, place some bets, something like that, kind of do like Biff Tannen did in Back to the Future 2. I think that's what most people are going to kind of try to do. But with Johnny, he just wanted to do the right thing. He wanted to save people. That's very admirable. Using that gift to save people is something that you would say, hey, that's just as honorable and chivalrous of a thing as you can do. But what really got me with Johnny is that this guy was willing to let himself go down in history as a crazed nut to save humanity, basically. This guy really did save the world in so many aspects. So that's something I just find absolutely just amazing. And I love his relationship that he has with his dad in that book. As bad as things get, he always has this amazing relationship with his dad to where I said, I want to have a relationship like that with my kids. I want them to feel like they can talk to me about anything. So that's something that I always will really admire about Johnny Smith is, his family was very important to him, but also doing the right thing. Getting this, with great power comes great responsibility, right? Well, he took that to heart and he did it, even at the detriment to his own identity, at the end of the book. So very, very flawed, but amazing, amazing character. How about the Tower, guys? We got to talk about the Dark Tower here. And when I come to the Dark Tower, I got to think about one of my favorite protagonists in all of the multiverse, and that is, of course, Eddie Dean of Brooklyn. Now, what I love about Eddie is when he first shows up, he gives the series a little bit of levity that it needed, but never to a point to where he was just there to crack jokes. It might have seemed like that at first, and you do get these ideas sometimes that the rest of the quartet kind of looks at Eddie, I don't want to say as a joke, but they don't take him seriously when it comes to problem solving. And by the end of that series, Eddie is every bit the gunslinger that everyone else in that quartet is. He's very serious, and he's just an amazing, amazing character arc that we know that Stephen King can do. And he does it over 6 books with this character. And he turns into a leader. He turns into a father figure to Jake. He's a husband to Susan. He's almost like the son that Roland never had. Just the relationships that he builds in that quartet, as well as just, as a leader that he becomes, and the things that he's able to do in that series, that when he showed up in Drawing of the Three, you would have never thought that was coming from that character. Absolutely amazing character. Love him to death. My favorite in the quartet, and it's probably my second favorite in all the multiverse. So, a character I adore quite a bit. And, I just love him. I love him to death, and I can never, ever love anyone as much as I love Eddie Dean. That's my dude right there. I love him to death. How about Dolores Claiborne from Dolores Claiborne? Now, with Dolores Claiborne, there's one instance in this story where basically there's some screwy stuff going on with the money that she's been saving on the side, to eventually try to get away from her abusive husband. And basically the bank goes over her head and lets her husband, take the account over. And when she tries to do the same thing, they won't let her. She flat out says, like, hey, if my husband, or if I try to do this, you would have said, I need to talk to your husband. When my husband comes and do it, you never said, do I need to talk to your wife? And that's just an instance, guys. There are several things like that in this story, that she faces these odds, this oppression, very much almost like a second-class citizen, and she overcomes them. That's the kind of stuff I love in my stories. So when you want to talk about a strong female lead, this is it, guys. Dolores is amazing. She's an amazing character, and what she goes through in this journey of this book is just sensational. So I think that is a very, very underrated character in his multiverse, and it's one of the best female characters he's ever written. And I love her. I think she is very much, you want to talk about like feminist icons. Look, I'm a guy, so I can't say these things, but to me, that would be a feminist icon in literary form, is Dolores Claiborne, because I think she's just incredible. She's inspiring, and she just gets stuff done. She's like a more modern version of Scarlett O'Hara. Everyone tells her she can't do it, and she does it, you know. And even if she's got to lie, cheat, steal, or kill, like Scarlett would say, Dolores will find a way to do that, provide for her family, and to ensure her own survival. So just an amazing, amazing woman. I love her. How about Misery here? I got to talk about Paul Sheldon. Now, we always want to talk about Annie when we talk about Misery, but we got to think about Paul, what he's able to go to overcome in that story, because anyone else would have lost their sanity. They would have gone insane, being tortured, being held against your will, being verbally and mentally abused. This guy was, physically abused, mentally abused, all that stuff. He was being drugged, he was being beaten, he was being dismembered. This guy was just facing it all while being forced to do something that he didn't want to do and being held against his will. The fact that this guy was able to maintain his sanity alone was enough to make this an amazing character. But again, you can find things to relate to with this character. You know, you are known for doing one thing. That's all people ever want you to do. And a theme, I think, of the story is him trying to do something different. Like, he's known as this one type of writer. He wants to branch out and do something different. You know, I've had those things where I want to do different things. I was like, oh, but you're good at this. Why don't you just stick to that? I have other interests, you know. I want to do other things too. So that's what I've always liked about Paul. And of course, like I said, just being able to overcome what he does in that story is just amazing. You got to have like the strongest mind ever to overcome what he comes in that story, physically and mentally as well. Next up is one that I actually just read for the first time last year. I've said many times, one of my favorite things that King does is not only the coming-of-age story, but just slice of life. Just our character going through the years, living their day-to-day life. That's something that he can make not boring for some reason. I think that's just something that he just excels at. And he excels really, really well with it with Jamie Morton from Revival. You want to talk about flawed characters. Jamie is basically everything that Danny Torrance turns into in Dr. Sleep after The Shining. I think with Jamie is this guy has just been a fuck up for a lot of his life. And he's obviously had something very, very unique happen to him. And it's this whole book you're trying to figure out what it is. But what I like about this character is, damn the results. He knows that no matter what he does, this is something that's going to happen. And he just throws caution to the wind, and he just does what he needs to do for the good of mankind. That's something in his characters that I'll always admire, that he's able to make them make those tough choices that I don't know if you or I could make those. But again, the thing with Jamie, though, is even though he might have noble intentions on some of these things after he gets cleaned up, things don't always turn out the way that they're supposed to. But again, that's what makes his character so real to me, is because, you can make all your plans, but, they never quite turn out the way that you plan for them to happen, right? So, again, just growing up through the years that's coming, you start with this, he is just, a toddler, basically, up through, his twilight of his life. That's just an amazing, amazing journey. And I just wanted to hang out with Jamie. While I was reading, I just wanted to hang out with him. The stuff with him in high school, I was like, this is the guy that I would have been hanging out with in high school, for sure. We would have been friends. So, again, it's just a character that I just found so much to appreciate about him, warts and all, because, guys, he had some very, very big problems. And he does find a way to overcome them with or without a certain shocking bit of therapy, so to speak. Great book, guys, if you haven't read it yet. How about some law, some authority figure here? Character I love is Sheriff Alan Pangborn. Now, he is in The Dark Half. He is in Needful Things. I believe he was in Bag of Bones, but it might have just been mentioned. I can't really remember. I think actually it was just mentioned in Bag of Bones because, I'll tell you, because it talks about his fate, I believe, in that book. I don't know. It's been a long time since I read Bag of Bones. I read that on release day. Haven't thought about it very much since because, well, if you've read it, you know. But the thing about Sheriff Alan Pangborn is I thought it would be hard to replace Sheriff Bannerman, who was actually in the multiverse for a few books, The Dead Zone and Cujo, and met his untimely fate in that book. And then it was like, okay, well, who can replace him? So the next sheriff of Castle Rock we get is Sheriff Bannerman. And not only did I grow to really, really like the character, he grew to be one of my favorites. And obviously, he has the favor of the White from the Dark Tower. That's obviously something, if you know, you know. If you don't know, it doesn't ruin anything for you. Don't worry about it. But there are some things about the character that are just very, very likable. You think about that this character is battling depression big time. He does lose a child, and that's something that he's never really gotten over. And I've said that's probably something you never get over. That's just something you learn to live with. But to me, and this is something I felt like he nailed with grief in Pet Sematary, he nails depression so well with this character. And I suffered with depression for like 30 years of my life before I changed my eating habits. And it was tough. It was awful. And I think he really does nail how that feels with Alan Pangborn. That feeling of feeling like you need to lay down and you realize that you're already laying down. That kind of depression, I think he really, really does nail that. But again, this is a character that is going to do his duty. A character that is always going to do the right thing, is always going to make the right decision, regardless of what is going to happen to himself. And he does maybe, I think, somewhat might have a death wish, because of, how depressed he is, the bad things that have happened in his life. But with him, it's about finding a reason to live. And I think that is a great, great journey with that character. And I wish we'd have gotten more Pangborn in the multiverse, because I just think he was a wonderful, wonderful character. But after Needful Things, he's like, I'm going to take a step back from Castle Rock for a while. I know he said it was the last Castle Rock story, but I believe it has some short stories in there and things like that. But hey, again, don't hold me accountable on these things or anything. How about some youth on this list? I gotta get some youth because I love my coming of age characters. I love my preteen coming of age story. How about under extraneous circumstances like vampires? Let's talk about Mark Petrie from Salem's Lot. Now, I wanted to go with Father Callahan here, but I felt like that would be picking two from another series because he does show up in another series, but I don't want to tell you about that. I want to talk about Mark Petrie here because I don't think Ben Mears overcomes what happens in Salem's Lot without Mark Petrie. Mark Petrie is one of the first to realize what is going on. He's one of the first to acknowledge, not be like, oh, he talking about vampires or kid stuff. This guy believes from day one what's going on. He's figured it out before anyone else. And it's not like he's the smartest person in the room, but something King will do sometimes is, he will make you think, okay, I think the innocence of youth is why they're able to believe that these crazy things are happening much more than an adult would. And I think that's something he does really, really well. And he does it great here with Mark Petrie. But Salem's Lot, guys, I think that is a legitimately scary novel. I've said that you get like a certain age and your book can't really scare you very much. There's still some pretty spooky things in there. And it'll make you kind of be like, what was that noise when you're reading, alone at night? So with Mark Petrie, I think you were able to go back to what it was like at that age to be like, I grew up with like miles of forest behind my house, and there's a scene where he's going through the forest in that story, and it scares the shit out of me, So it's just one of those things. I was the creepy kid that was into like the monster books and stuff too when I was younger. Loved horror stories, loved monster movies and things. So again, that might be me seeing a lot of myself in Mark Petrie there, but awesome, just braver than I could have ever been under those circumstances. And again, I don't think that that mini quartet that they kind of form in Salem's Lot, it sticks together without Mark. I think Mark very was the glue that kept that group together, even after some unfortunate things happened to some members of that party. We got to talk about The Stand, right, guys? Because you want to talk about great characters. There are so many to choose from in The Stand. This was so hard, guys. I love so many characters. I love Glenn. I love Stu. Oh, my God, I love so many. I love all these characters. It's really, really hard. I got to go with Larry Underwood, though. And Larry Underwood, you're making me pick my favorite character in the multiverse. It's going to be Larry Underwood. I think the reason is because I always used to say, because guys, I was doing this for a long time before it actually like picked up any steam. I podcasted for like 10 years. I used to sing and things like that. I used to do all these things and never really found like, outside of like just entertaining myself, any like real feedback of anyone else who enjoyed what I did, So something I always said was I felt like I would finally, break through with something, and then the world would end, and that's kind of what happens to Larry Underwood. He has his 15 minutes. He basically has like the last hit on the radio before the world ends. So it's like you finally get your big break, and then the world ends kind of thing. So that's just something I always could have seen happening to myself. So I've always loved that about him. But with Larry, this is a guy that you think at first is very, very selfish. He grows over the course of the story. He does the right thing. Again, he's able to face these odds that a regular person would be too scared to do, knowing that it probably isn't going to end well for him, but knowing it's for the good of everyone else that he loves. And that's just like the decisions that you want to believe. If you're in that situation, you would make the same choice, So Larry is a character that everyone, I think, can see a little bit of themselves in. So I think that Larry just being just a guy, that had his big moment, and then it's like, oh, well, 5 minutes too late, I think that really did make him relatable in so many ways. And, well, baby, can you dig your man? So let's go ahead and end this list with some more youth here. I got to talk about Charlie McGee from Firestarter. Now, look, like I said, I grew up with a dysfunctional family, but we were never on the run. I felt like we were never on the run. This is just some of those things that kind of affected me more in my reread as a father. Now, I have 2 sons, not a daughter, but still a lot of the same dad shit, as I put it, is going to be there. So seeing this relationship with her and her father as them on the run from this, the shadow organization or the shop, I think that's something that just kind of made me think of The Road by Cormac McCarthy, of like, what would you do to protect your child? But it's kind of flipped in reverse with this, in that Charlie is almost to the point where she's almost protecting her father because she is way more powerful. And I think there's a point where, you can cross someone like that and, hey, maybe you shouldn't be playing with matches, right? Because Charlie is not only compassionate, she's very vindictive, and you don't want to cross her. And I think the relationship that her and Rainbird have in that story is so chilling. And it's done so well to when you have that climax. It is explosive, to say the least. No gasoline required. So I think that Charlie just is another character. You're growing up under just very, very different circumstances. And being able to not only keep your cool, no pun intended, although it does work, guys, keep your cool under some of the situations that she goes through, handling the pressure, the anxiety of always being on the run and things like that, and just kind of coming through with flying colors. It's just an amazing, amazing character that I feel like has been ripped off a million times. You guys ever watch Stranger Things? Yes, Charlie McGee, Carrie. That is very much the influence, I think, for 11 on that show, and it's for good reason, because it is a great, great character. So, guys, that is my 10 favorite protagonists. I know I'm gonna get a lot of people be like, what about Jake and Sadie? For me, I can't think about just Jake or just Sadie. I have to think about Jake and Sadie. That's kind of a couple to me there. So if I was doing like my favorite couples in Stephen King books, we might actually do that down the road. Then those two would definitely be on that list. But guys, that was some of my favorite protagonists within the multiverse. How about yourself? Do you have any characters that you just love in the multiverse? I am sure there are plenty within and without. Like, we're going with that outside of the multiverse. I mean, I do love me some Holly. So there are plenty of characters that I've missed, I'm sure, that I would love to talk to you about in the comments. So why don't you drop down there and let me know, guys, and I will talk to you there.